David, es un gusto. Muchas gracias por esta maravillosa oportunidad. La verdad es un honor y bueno, quisiera empezar con una de las películas más emblemáticas, creo que estuvo para prima, lo más destacado que es Mr. Horse. Mr. Horse se considera una pieza elemental lo que es el tema del cine independiente sobre la venganza. No es sobre los asesinos seriales, sino que el protagonista es un cambio repentino en descubrir su identidad. Entonces me gustaría preguntarle qué tan eficiente puede ser las películas como Mr. Puss para los estudiantes de cine que asumen el tema del terror.
Okay, first we welcome you to this channel, and we will start with your opera prima, your first movie that is Mr. Hush. And the question is, knowing that this movie deals mostly not with killing, but mostly with vengeance and with the subject of identity, what do you think that is important for indie filmmakers or for students to learn and to know about Mr. Hush in a movie class or a movie lesson?
Okay, well, first off, thank you very much for having me, gentlemen. It's a complete honor to be on your show. Are you guys both currently in Colombia?
Yes.
Well, I've never been in Colombia, and I'm absolutely honored to be joining you guys. And your first question about Mr. Hush. Mr. Hush, when I made that film, was supposed to be a contemporary reinvention of 80s horror movies. It's supposed to be an 80s-like horror movie, but made in contemporary times. And because I grew up, I'm a middle-aged guy now, I'm 50 years old, and I grew up in the 80s, and I loved films like Fright Night, Near Dark, and Lost Boys, and all those wonderful 80s horror movies. Mr. Hush was my loving ode to 80s horror movies. So to answer your question, it was made to be in the stylistic sense of an 80s horror movie, but also have contemporary scares and contemporary a contemporary feel to it, an atmosphere of like Halloween, which is a very popular holiday here in the U.S.
After I translate that answer, we want to invite you. Well, I talk in behalf of Jhon, of course, because later in this channel, we will upload the interview with Tom Holland, the director of Fright Night. So,
fantastic.
We will be, yes. And this answer is amazing for talking about that, but I will translate, pues Jhon, vas a amar la respuesta, porque aunque creo que tú lo notaste, Mr. Hush es un homenaje al cine hecho en los 80, pero con las dinámicas de miedo del cine contemporáneo, pero es un homenaje claro, bueno, acá no está diciendo David que, bueno, no se nota, pero que ya es un hombre, está en sus 50 y que él ama todo este cine, pues mencionó a Friday Night, mencionó a las películas ochenteras, más que toda la celebración de Halloween, que allá sí se celebra directamente con el terror, y que, pues, tomando tu respuesta, ¿no? De cuál sería la lección para los estudiantes de cómo sería el enfoque de una película moderna basado en ese cine de los años 80, y obviamente lo invité a que cuando se suba la de Tom Holland, para que vea la entrevista de Friday Night, que yo sé que estaría súper contento.
No, sería excelente. Además, dile a David de que sus producciones ejecutivas, tanto producciones asociadas y lo que hace en su arte, es uno de los pocos directores que el terror ochentero permanece en lo actual. Es como decir un remake.
No, in fact, Jhon wants to tell you that he feels that atmosphere in your movies, that you are one of the few modern directors that get that 80s atmosphere. He wants you to say that.
Oh, thank you very, very much. It's very, very kind of him to say. It was my first film, and I wanted to show my passion for 80s horror films and for not contemporary horror films that are more about gore and nudity and things that I don't really have any interest in. I'm more of an old soul when it comes to horror films.
Dice, bueno, Jhon, te agradece y claro, dice que no está interesado ni en el gore ni en la desnudez, ni en los temas que se manejan ahora. Dice que quiere que sus filmes tengan esa alma antigua.
Es una gran respuesta. Además, bueno, antes de abordar un poco más de Mr. House, pasemos a otros temas que son muy interesantes, que es Pasado en la Gente. Es una producción que él realizó muy importante, que habla sobre el presente, pasado y futuro. Entonces, me parece, claro, lógico de que la persona a veces puede ser que en el presente es lo más incierto, pero como él está instruido en el tema tanto del cine sobrenatural, en el cine de toda la vida humana, ¿qué considera para él expresar de esa película que pueda influir en el día a día actual? Sobre todo en lo que se ve actualmente. ¿Será que esta película refleja un poco como que flashbacks?
La resumiré, está buenísima la pregunta. It's a long question, but I will resume it. Because we're going to talk emerging past. Do you think that this movie, I don't know, tells something about the world that we live now, but in flashbacks? We know that the present is uncertain, we know it, but what do you think that this movie can reflect from the world that we live now? Or the times?
It's funny because it's really just a story about it's an age-old story of what a man will do for his loved ones. It's a story about a father who is heartbroken because he lost his wife and his daughter is now missing, and the lengths that he would go through to make sure that that they are found safe. And I think that's a story that anybody who's ever been a father can relate to. I wrote this script when I was heavily inspired by a Clint Eastwood film called The Outlaw Josie Wales. And in Outlaw Josie Wales, the Clint Eastwood character loses everything he loves, and he tries to put the shambles of his life back together. And that's kind of what our hero Holland Price in the film Mr. Hush is doing after that fateful Halloween night when Mr. Hush comes in the beginning of the movie and brutally kills his wife and kidnaps his daughter. So we learn a story that never ever changes is the love of family and the terrible ordeal that he has to go through to get his daughter back, but so that he can feel whole again.
Okay, I was searching for a better pronunciation of the Clint Eastwood movie, but I will translate. Jhon dice que pues es gracioso, aunque acá hay una referencia que vas a amar, porque pues técnicamente es la historia de un padre que decide como que tener ciertos links, ciertas conexiones al pasado por una pérdida terrible, ¿no? Y obviamente pues dice que esta película la escribió hace un tiempo inspirado en una cinta de Clint Eastwood que estoy buscando, pero acá hay una referencia buenísima. Tú viste Mr. Hush, ¿cierto? Tú sabes muy bien que en Mr. Hush al principio hay una escena de una película y es esa película. O sea que hay un link entre ambas. Tal vez por eso, o sea, es como una especie de guiño que está en esta y esta película. Entonces digamos que eso creo que puede resolver.
O sea, que puede resolver eso enigma. No, ya me percaté por qué eso. También, es que la secuencia de él en sus películas es genial porque, bueno, Mr. House, la escena de los pasado, presente, futuro, también está Pueblo Medio. Pueblo Medio es como un amor a su lugar de infancia, que es Maître Villar. Maître Villar significa para él como un momento de él como recordar a lo que eran sus vivencias, sus experiencias, todo, y me recuerda mucho a las épocas de los 50, de los 60, cuando recién iniciaba como el tema del amor, pero más que el amor refleja como es la nostalgia, cómo desarrolla para él una película que está muy cargada de nostalgia, que para aquella persona que la ve puede reflejar, no sé, un arte, llorar, reír, de todo.
De cómo él reflejó eso en la película. Y la película se llama Don't Love Josie Wales, la película de okay. We're going to talk about Middle Village, and the question is, how do you manage to reflect this feeling of nostalgia that gives this documentary? That also has something bites from other eras, other times.
It's really was just a loving ode to a simpler time when I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And Middle Village was a small town outside of New York City that pretty much anybody who grew up in that time, especially in the United States, could relate to, like playing stickball on the streets or putting baseball cards in your spokes and playing ring and run and doing all those silly things that we did when we were kids. We knew that it was time to go home in the summer when the street lamps came on. And it was just a feeling of nostalgia. Brian O'Halloran, who's a big star here in the United States, who stars in the Clerks films, walked around my old town and we reminisced about a simpler, more healthy time that everybody lived in back in the past before technology kind of took over every aspect of our lives. I mean, I think a lot of interpersonal human communication is now lost because a lot of people seem to choose like viral networks like Facebook and Twitter and all those viral networks as their main source of communication. I kind of liked it back in the day when people used to spend time together. We'd look each other in the eye, we'd have a beer together, we'd play ball together. All these things that are kind of going by the wayside that I waxed poetic about in Middle Village as a documentary about the, a simpler time in a simpler place.
Wow, it's the Brian O'Halloran of the movies of Kevin Smith. Wow, I was thinking, I know that guy, I know that name. Wow.
Yeah, he's Dante in Clerks, and he just finished shooting Clerks 3, which is going to probably open up #1 in American cinemas. It's those movies are enormous.
Yes, not only in North America. We were talking with some friends. Friends, I'm in the 30s, and we were talking, of course, that it will be awesome that Kevin came back to the roots because we love Clerks, and I will tell to my friends that it's okay. Clerks will come back. Yes. Okay, Jhon. Wow. Aquí me adelanto un poco al final porque sabes muy bien que el protagonista de este documental es Brian O'Halloran y es el mismo Brian O'Halloran de las películas de Kevin Smith. Dice que es que lo que se quiere reflejar es que sí, Middle Village es una sección de Nueva York donde se ve muchísimo, por ejemplo, esa cuestión que también yo creo que se puede representar acá en Colombia, ¿no? De salir a jugar, bueno, obviamente hace muchos años, en la calle, de hacer juego, dice que eran unas locuras, que ahorita se perdieron por el paso del tiempo. Por eso es que se refleja esa nostalgia, pero me vengo a dar cuenta, sin que nos lo diga, pero yo ya lo sentí, que es como un estilo de ese cine muy, muy de Nueva York, lo que estábamos hablando ahorita. Entonces creo que tú lo notaste. Y obviamente por eso él es el protagonista. Y sí, dijo que aunque no tenga que ver con lo de él, sí, se viene Clerks 3, o sea, por el lado de Kevin Smith, pero wow. Dale.
Genial. La pregunta en sí es, ¿esta película puede mucho ayudar a los fotógrafos para sentirse en una situación así? ¿Qué se puede organizar o aprender de esta película?
I will resume it very short. What can we learn from this movie or this character if we are dealing with the same situation? I don't know, using the same things that she does, that the photography, or I don't know, what can we learn from this movie?
From Emerging Past?
Yes, but the director Scott.
Yeah. Emerging Past was a film that I produced and I had a very small part in, but Emerging Past was a very, very taut little horror film. And the moral to Emerging Past, I'm not really sure there was one, to be honest with you. But it was a fun film to make, and it had a lot of it had Steve Dash, who played Jason Voorhees, in it, and it had Tony Moran, who played Michael Myers, and it had Brooke McCarter from The Lost Boys and Stephen Jeffries from Fright Night. So it had very, very, very a great cast of great horror icons, and it's a story about a woman who has these horrific kind of illusions that are brought on by the occult, and it's very stylistically photographed. It was a wonderfully shot movie, and it's my friend Tom Churchill, who I went to grammar school, wrote and directed it, and he's just a great filmmaker here in the U.S. But it was more of a contemporary kind of gore film, which is not my particular sensibility when it comes to being a filmmaker. But I had a great time producing that film and working with all those wonderful actors and with the great director Tom Churchill.
Wow, Jhon. Se tiene que entender algo, ¿no? Que tú sabes muy bien que aquí tenemos a David como productor y teniendo un papel muy, muy pequeño, porque pues la dirección fue Thomas Churchill, que dice que obviamente es un amigo, es una persona que admira, pero que tiene una aproximación al terror mucho más contemporánea, o sea, difiere un poco tal vez de la aproximación que tiene David. Hay que destacar algo, ¿no? Tú sabes muy bien el increíble elenco que tiene, ¿no? O sea, tiene Steve Dash, que hace un papel acá relacionado con los Burgess, es Dead Burgess, pero obviamente tú sabes muy bien que él había aparecido en Viernes 13, la segunda parte, tú lo sabes muy bien. Está Stephen Geoffreys, de Friday Night, y está Bruce McCarthy, Los Boy, o sea, hágame el favor. Y dice que para él fue un filme divertido incluso hacer, porque tú sabes muy bien que a pesar de, o sea, el personaje tiene una visión muy retorcida de cómo lidiar con eso. O sea, listo, sí, usa la fotografía y todo, pero es una visión muy, muy retorcida de eso. Tal vez aquí la pregunta que tenemos es cómo hubiera sido la aproximación a ese personaje si lo hubiera hecho David, que eso es lo que me gustaría saber. Y todo, porque esta es una aproximación muy contemporánea. Eso sí, con un elenco de lujo y pues un increíble trabajo acá de producción. ¿Te respondí?
Sí, de hecho sí. Es una muy buena respuesta. Y también, yo he repasado un poco la carrera de él y cuando él, desde 2010, desde el 2010 con Mr. Hoss, pasando 9 años después con El Legado, ya esta vez es un corto, pero resolviendo temas, porque ahí estuvo en la participación Edward Jhon. Edward Jhon es gran Mega Man. Y yo puedo decirte que cómo fue convertir en una historia que hace falta mucho trasfondo para hacerlo en un resumen de 13 minutos. ¿Cómo fue esa elaboración? ¿Qué sigue más?
How did you manage to continue the legacy of Mr. Hush in a short film? We're talking about Cosme, Mr. Hush legacy, and Jhon wants to know, yeah, not only having Edward Jhon playing the role, but also, yes, encapsulating everything in a short format, and what can we expect from this saga?
Oh, so Mr. Hush Legacy was a short film to help promote I had gotten the rights back to the original film, Mr. Hush, and we were re-releasing it on all the digital platforms here in the US. So to promote the re-release of Mr. Hush, we shot that short film of Mr. Hush Legacy that tells the story of how Stark's father, who was a Civil War soldier, ran into Mr. Hush in the Devil's Den in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, during the heart of the Civil War back in the 1800s. And it's a very, very compelling short about how the character, Stephen Jeffries' character, Stark's father, runs into Mr. Hush, who's a vampire who's lived now for hundreds and hundreds of years, ran into him during the heart of battle in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So, I mean, it was just a short little promo film to help promote the re-release of Mr. Hush, but a lot of people seem to think it was a lot of fun.
And I really want to say hi to Edward Jhon. I know this it's a fan film, but I love his version of Dr. Wily in Mega Man. I even got a tattoo from Mega Man. So.
Oh, you're talking about Edward X. Young, who plays Mr. Hush?
Yes.
Eddie LeBron made that Mega Man movie. That was a great film, and they did an amazing job for a fan film on Mega Man.
I got a tattoo from Mega Man. It's my favorite video game ever. Yeah, and it's the only tattoo I got. But I will translate. Jhon, vas a flipar. Es más, yo creo que te van a dar ganas de agarrar los papeles y irte a Estados Unidos. Todo esto se hizo porque afortunadamente, y algo que hay que celebrar, David recuperó los derechos de Mr. Hush. Se hizo un relanzamiento en DVD para Estados Unidos. Este corto promocional fue la forma de esto, sí, de como que continuar de cierta forma el legado. Ahí viene qué es lo que se viene. Lo que pasa es que se viene un personaje, Jeffries, es un vampiro que quiere como que, es una cuestión ahí entre qué haría Mr. Hodge con un vampiro que tal vez quiera recuperar algo. No se sabe, es una reunión de lujo, recuperó los derechos, y claro, yo le estaba diciendo que pues para mí un saludo para Edward Jhon, ¿no? O sea, él fue el que hizo de Dr. Wily en Mega Man, dice que sí, que le parece un gran, él es amigo de Eddie LeBron, pero o sea, quiero que te lo imagines, ¿qué haría David ahorita recuperando los derechos y juntando ese mundo de los vampiros con el mundo de Mr. Hodge?
Yo me vuelvo loco. Hay un crazy.
Yes.
También porque recuperando esa esencia va en una participación que tú tuviste, bueno, dirección y protagonismo, me gusta a mí también. Entonces, te comprendo ahí, David, lo que es el tema de Wise End. Wayne se considera la historia de Jeffrey. Jeffrey es una persona que lucha por la supervivencia. De todo, yo he visto en Quora, es una plataforma donde se evidencian preguntas, y Quora califica algunas películas de supervivencia. Claro, eso está para al idioma de Estados Unidos, donde yo veo un poco y las traduzco. Consideran esta película de Wise End como un método de supervivencia. Lo escucho alguna vez en Quora, la plataforma, porque considera que esa película sea buena. ¿Qué podemos aprender de ella?
Okay, this question is on Wits End. I hope I pronounce it right. And Jhon has read that in a platform called Quora, that is a platform about questions, that people consider that this is a great movie for learn about, yes, surviving issues. I don't know if it teaches. Do you think that this movie can help people in these crazy situations of surviving?
You know, it's actually was based upon something that happened to me in real life. I was coming home from Hershey, Pennsylvania, and in the daytime in Northeast Pennsylvania, it was like 60 degrees. But when we were coming up the mountain that day, about 3 hours north of when we spent the day at a beautiful theme park, an unexpected snow squall came through and heavy snow. And it made me realize how Mother Nature is something that to be trifled with, because any moment the weather can turn on you. And the film Wits End is another. I like to do stories about men, people who fight for survival because of true love. And the story is about a man who has a loving family who go off to a wedding reception in Florida, and he's home alone. So he goes out to his cabin in the woods to retrieve his wife and daughter's Valentine's Day presents. And on the way to his cabin up north, he gets stuck in an enormous blizzard and has to fight for his survival. Well, we shot that out in 2 superstorms, both of which in Northeast Pennsylvania had more than 5 feet of snow. So it was quite a very difficult shoot to shoot in those weather conditions. Some of the temperatures was up to 20 degrees below zero when we were shooting it. In fact, we lost 2 lenses that cracked from the extreme cold that we were shooting outside. And then when we brought them into a trailer, the temperature difference between the outside and the trailer made the lenses crack. But it was really just a loving story about a family man who fights against all odds to get to his back to his family. And when you're an independent filmmaker, you have to use everything that's possibly at your disposal to your advantage. And having 2 enormous storms led to what looked like enormous production values. Now, if Hollywood did a movie like that, they would do it in a controlled space, and it would, cost hundreds of millions of dollars, because they would make sure that, the actors weren't freezing and the snow wasn't real and all that. But when you do it out in the middle of the blizzard, and you have big epic spaces and open spaces like we did on Wits End. It really lent itself to being it just looked like a bigger movie than it was, because it was really just a very small indie.
Time is running off, but yes, I want to ask you that because I read about big productions, I know, like The Revenant, that Heart's Condition, and yes, how an indie filmmaker got to manage that. Oh my God, that's amazing. I will translate faster because time is running off, but man, that was amazing. Wow, I didn't expect that. Jhon, yo sé que el tiempo está acabando, así que voy al grano. Jhon, esto le pasó a él. Esto es basado en algo que le sucedió a él. Un día que iba para casa y digamos que la temperatura está como en Pensilvania, estaba como a 16 grados y de repente bajó muchísimo. O sea, si eso resuelve el hecho de que si es un manual de supervivencia, sí. La cuestión es que cuando él la grabó, las condiciones climáticas son reales. O sea, en realidad hubo 2 tormentas tan fuertes que la temperatura bajó a -20 e incluso se rompieron creo que le entendí que eran como lámparas. Sí, se rompían del frío. Él dice que cuando se es un cineasta independiente, o sea, imagínate, si en grandes producciones ocurren esos problemas y a pesar de todo lo tienen controlado, son tormentas controladas, logran que el actor no le pase nada o algo. Ahora imagínate cómo lo hizo él. De mi parte, no me queda más que felicitarlo porque es sorprendente.
Bravo, en serio, bravo, porque eso es bastante reconfortante y a la vez es muy duro de documentar y la verdad, admiraciones para usted y un respeto grande. Bueno, David, lo más importante, un saludo para Colombia, Latinoamérica, tus redes sociales, que siguen los futuros proyectos. Por ahí vi que Brigada Indie es una serie de televisión que estarás con Grieco, Castro, con uno de tus actores, Echiafo. Entonces, cuéntanos tus redes sociales, todo y qué se viene.
Okay, David. First, Jhon was telling me that it's comforting to know that everything is fine and great to learn about this experience and all your experience. Now, for the finish, the camera is yours, man. You want to say hi to Colombia, to the channel, talk about your new projects. You know, we know that from Indie Brigade that you're having interviews with amazing people. Tell us everything you want. The camera is yours, man. And for us, it's a congratulations, man. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to thank both of you gentlemen. I was extraordinarily impressed about how well versed and how knowledgeable you guys are. It's absolutely a complete honor and privilege to be on your show. I want to say hello to everybody in Colombia. Someday I hope to visit. I hear it's quite a beautiful, beautiful country. Right now, I am currently shooting a werewolf film called Full Moon Fever. And it's a very fantastic throwback to werewolf films. If you like American Werewolf in London and Silver Bullet and The Howling, you will love Full Moon Fever. That will be coming out in early 2022. We had a great werewolf transformation scene. It has Marianne Hagen, who was Kara Strode in Halloween. It has Scott Schiaffo from Clerks, and it has a bunch of other great co-stars that we're going to announce as the film gets closer to release. You could please follow that film, Full Moon Fever, on Facebook. We also have the End of the Night show, where every week we have a who's who of major celebrities come on and we talk about films and filmmaking and being directors and actors and writers. And we try to educate everybody and just have a good time. That's every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the End of the Night Facebook page and the Indie Escape YouTube page. My co-host is the wonderfully talented Scott Schiaffo of Clerks, who is in Rhode Island Comic-Con as we speak. They have a big Clerks reunion. It's him and Brian and Kevin and Jeff and all the stars are out there this weekend. So he won't be on my show this Sunday night, but the lovely Tiffany Shepis will be in as our co-host on Sunday nights, stepping in for Scott. And Joe Ridgely is just an amazing producer and co-host on that show. So look for that. And again, watch. Where do you guys watch things like Wits End and Mr. Hush in Colombia? Do you guys have Tubi?
Jhon, ¿dónde viste tú Mr. Hush and Wits End? ¿En Tubi o en dónde?
Tubi. Claro.
Yes, Tubi. We got Tubi. It's crazy because Tubi is not known here, but thanks to Jhon, I discovered it. For me, it has become like a drug because we found all the kinds of cinema that we didn't watch here. And it's crazy because I lived in Colombia has something really. Oh, we got time. Okay, Colombia has something crazy. When the city is small, it's more probable that you will find these indie productions in the cinemas. But when the cities are big, no man, only the blockbusters and big prices that. So yes, we watched it on Tubi, but I was asking Jhon if he watched it on Tubi. Yes.
Awesome.
Tubi rolls.
That's one of the bigger platforms that show my movies, Tubi and Amazon, of course. And Mr. Hush was on Netflix. So, it's wonderful when you're an indie filmmaker that you have so many platforms available now to get people throughout the world to be able to see your projects.
Okay, I will translate faster. Jhon, se viene una película llamada Full Moon Fever trata el tema, obviamente, de los hombres lobo. Es que estoy recordando el nombre del autor, pero tiene gente de Howling, es un homenaje de Howling, al Silver Bullet, tiene un actor de Clerks, también, claro, tiene un programa que es de aprendizaje, no solo en Brigade, creo que cada noche de jueves hay entrevistas sobre terror, y nada, dice que le gustaría venir a Colombia. Sí, déjame averiguar el nombre. No, es que I am remembering because we interviewed one of the actors from one of the many the Howlings movies, but I don't remember the name. Okay. It's okay. I will tell. We got a Mexican friend. He's not here because sometimes the outer schedules in the world. Because by the way, this channel is non-profit. But I will tell about Full Moon Fever. He loves werewolves. In fact, he's studying cinema in Mexico, and he's doing everything, all this terror from Mexico, but all this image. We will tell, and let us know when you got everything from this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, Jhon, lo que tú quieras.
Por último, dile que cuando yo esté promocionando el último proyecto que estás, con gusto nos da la exclusiva.
Sí, no, ya le dije. But Jhon, say the same in Spanish. Please, when Full Moon Fever is out there, please let us know.
Yeah, I would love to have the whole cast of Full Moon Fever on your show. If you guys could have multiple people, that'd be awesome.
Please repeat the names so I can tell to Jhon, and Jhon pass out and freak out.
Marianne Hagen from Halloween, Scott Schiaffo from Clerks, and Griffin Dunn from American Werewolf in London.
Griffin Dunn por de Hombre Lobo Americano en Londres, una actriz de Halloween y un actor de Clerks van a estar acá cuando se lance Full Moon Fever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, when it comes out, we'd be honored to do your show. Jhon, you're awesome, by the way. I'm sorry there's a language barrier between the two of us, but I could tell that you have an amazing passion for cinema and for filmmaking, and I could see it in the way your eyes light up when you talk about it. That's really awesome, and I'm very, very proud of how smart and how awesome you are when it comes to film.
Jhon, que tú eres increíble, que se nota la pasión que tienes por el cine, que se le ven los ojos, y es genial por cómo hablas de las películas. Me pidió que lo tradujera.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, David.
You're very welcome.
Bye, David.
Bye.
See
All
ya.
right, gentlemen, have a lovely evening. Good night, everybody in Colombia. Thank you for having me on, and look out for Full Moon Fever this 2022.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.